But I'm going to start with today's webinar. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce and today's webinar on digitally responding to discontinuity. I'm Narinda Multani, account manager here at the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. Today, my member David Allock and Chris Jones will be delivering today's webinar. So I'm going to hand you over to Chris, who will commence with the webinar. And before I do that, I just want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, so you can listen to it again via our chamber library. And also, if you have any questions, then please post them in the chat box, and Chris or David will answer them for you towards the end. So, yep, over to Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Narinda. And welcome everybody to another lockdown webinar. So this one is really all about kind of what's happening at the moment, but not only what's happening at the moment in the last 12 months, but looking forward to the next year coming up. And by way of background, just a couple of words about who we are. Icon has always been a virtual company. For 9 years, we've been spearheading advanced digital technologies for UK businesses, both directly and indirectly through our business partners as they take the solutions to market. But today isn't about products or solutions, but it's the philosophy of preparing for the next major change or discontinuity as a digitally agile organization. And being digitally agile benefits everybody in the chain. So most businesses in the UK don't value office productivity as highly as some of our major competitors, such as in Germany or Korea, for example. And so for many UK organizations, workflow processes are, compared with the best in practice, rather clunky, error prone, include some paper perhaps at times, and are labor intensive. And business competitiveness and survival are therefore threatened when unexpected major events occur, causing either business gaps or trend shifts, also known as discontinuities. And that's the topic of today. So as we move forward through, sorry, I'm just getting the slide controls working. So as we move forward through the session, we'll be exploring this theme. It's a theme where often discontinuities simply accelerate trends that are already obvious to innovators and those that could see what was happening. And so this webinar is to help firms like yours perhaps to improve thinking about business response to changing regulations, working patterns, and customer expectations. And I'm sure that every organization has been infected in some way to one or more of the 6 factors that are listed here. Now, what's curious is that not all those have been negative reactions. Whilst digitally immature businesses have struggled, have been mothballed, or have failed, actually digitally agile businesses have thrived. Revenues have skyrocketed and they're eating competition's market share. So how do we bring these together, and what has been learned? Well, we can firstly look at, how do you know you've been impacted? Well, part of the impact is to look at factors such as, if you're struggling with any one of the symptoms that you can see on screen here, then you know there's an impact on your business, whether that's systems and processes not being able to keep up, pressure on cost cutting, customer frustration, skills shortages, errors. Those sorts of things are all symptoms, obviously, of negative impacts. And very often people are just pressured by trying to work harder rather than smarter. And the good news is that we're here to say that it's rarely too late to change. There are solutions. So let's just explore a little bit more. You know, what do people desire? What do they want? And I think largely what people want, and it doesn't matter whether you're staff or client or partner or other type of stakeholder. What people want is often just the flip side of the same coin. People look for things like job satisfaction, helping customers to have a good experience. Customers themselves want to have a good experience. Business owners want to see their businesses prosper, as do their employees. But the employees don't want to be working all hours God sends. They want the tools to be able to work smarter rather than harder. And therefore, as a business, being able to respond quickly when changes occur. So with so many common aspirations, what is preventing this? Just wait for the slide to advance. Okay. So we can see that there's a whole variety of different barriers or obstacles that companies face in terms of putting in place more and more agile digital responses. And for this audience, we know that many small and medium-sized enterprises don't have the luxury of multi-million-dollar or multi-million-pound IT budgets, specialist change teams, or the like. And without those, change can sometimes appear very daunting and all too difficult. Now, some of the barriers that we've noted here are ones that you may have seen in your organization, either fragmented data silos, or your IT department is pressured from all sides, or you don't have an IT department, or you don't know what the alternatives are. It could be one of many things. So we're just interested to take a quick straw poll, and for that we've numbered these one to 5, with 6 being other. And I wonder if you could take a moment just to put in the chat whichever of these numbers is relevant to your organizations, and if it's a 6, maybe just a couple of brief words in terms of the other. We'll basically take a poll of the audience and we'll feed back on that later on in this session. I'll just give you a moment to add those to the chat. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you for your responses. So my colleague David will be looking at those and feedback on those just a little bit later. So what we're seeing is that agility is being achieved through digital transformation type approaches. Those approaches may differ and do differ from industry to industry, size of organization, the focus for any particular initiatives. But across those different things, it usually comes down to one of a small set of options. And those options we've grouped into 3 categories. The first one here is the most common decision. That's a do nothing. That is low risk short term, but of course longer term ignores all sorts of problems and actually threatens the business. And in fact, change itself can feel threatening and often uncomfortable for those involved, but it doesn't have to be like that. The second option is one at the other end. This is one of rip and replace. And we often see this with, we're going to completely change our ERP system, or completely change our CRM and our front-end customer processes. But this big bang, high cost, do it all in one project to end all projects type approach is one that's highly disruptive, and is also high risk indeed. In between 2/3 of these type of categories fail, and in some categories, I won't name names, but would be pleased to share information if you'd like to inquire further. In some categories, up to 90% of projects in this sphere that we've seen in other organisations fail, and there's some very obvious ones that grab the headlines. So the third approach is one that's a stepped approach, and a stepped approach is one where you're eating the elephant one bit at a time. You're not trying to do it all at once, and the energy that you get from eating that piece one part at a time, obviously, not a particularly PC analogy these days, perhaps, but the energy that you get from that allows you to go on to then complete the desired task in the desired time frame. And so this is about achieving immediate benefits, lowering the risk, getting the staff involved, remaining involved and bought in through the process. And this approach also happens to save time, cash, and preserve confidence. And with most IT directors, for example, having a longevity these days of between 12 and 15 months, that also can be material if you need to involve your IT department. So we've often found this third option, the stepped approach, is the most successful. And that's why in today's session, we're going to talk a little bit further about the stepped approach. So how's the stepped approach different? Well, firstly, the focus is the process and not the system, whatever system that is. It's about an end-to-end view of every interaction that takes part of that process, in terms of the details of the transaction, the details of the interaction, who is involved, what information needs to flow from A to B, where are the data sources, is everything regulated, and so on. It's a holistic management of the entire process lifecycle. And we can do that either for one process, or you can do that for any process. And for us, we'll take that just one step further, which is this is about using and enhancing what you already have and only adding what you need extra to that. And this is something that we specialize in helping firms with, which means you can leverage your existing investments far more. So let's look at, well, what do most systems comprise? And just logically or graphically, here are three, this little graphic just points to three things. At the bottom level here, you've got your data, and as data flows with their interactions with clients or suppliers or partners, data often flows between these different silos. So one of these silos might be your customer systems, another might be your order processing or procurement systems, others might be your delivery systems to do with your particular specialist value add, others could be finance or HR or whatever. But that as your business with any of your particular clients or suppliers flows, data will flow through these different databases or other types of systems. And so this, if you like, life cycle data occurs with these flows going sideways. Now, the problem with that is that when humans then interact with it, they're using very often email and spreadsheets with attachments, and are then having to manually copy paste or do all sorts of manual work to make best sense of this. So this second element here, the P, this is the presentation layer. And for the presentation layer, this is how we view the data and how we integrate the data coming from these systems. Now, if the individual only needs data from one system, then typically that will be sufficient, and they might only have a PC for that. But if you're part of an organization where you need to connect to other data within the organization from other databases, or indeed you need to connect to data coming from outside the organization in your clients or partners or suppliers databases, then you're going to need a way of presenting this that makes the most sense to each of the different users that you have. And that comes to the third layer. The third layer, the intermediate layer, is the integration layer that allows the routing, if you like, the data going to the right places in the presentation layer itself. And so with this, if you are putting your systems together correctly, you should be able to allow the right people to be able to see the right information at the right time in the right place. So conceptually, very simple. In practice, either very difficult, or this really needs the right technologies and the right tools to help you do it. But with the right tools, then there's some very, very positive outcomes from this. So firstly, you could get immediate access to all these islands of data. You could provide a dashboard of events to all your different users, where each person gets their own personalized management and actions console. Actually, let me just advance the slide one more. And within this, you can see that each of the different views you can get can be dramatically different in terms of the use of graphics, images, spreadsheets, or anything else. So each user could have this data down below presented in a way that is most useful for their particular task. And thirdly, at the integration layer, this allows you to not only provide management, but it also allows you to automate that. So you can bring in your business rules of the organization for all your different workflow processes. And this can build in exceptions, handling routines, as well as the standard run the business everyday routines. And this tremendously allows you to automate what are otherwise repetitive, laborious manual tasks. And we believe that the best approach to do this isn't big bang, but to start with this approach and roll it out process by process. So if you might have a starting process relating to one of these data stores or two or three of these data stores, but for one process that allows you to automate that. And then as you actually get the benefits from that, let the savings from the digitized use of that first process then pay for project 2, project 3, project 4, but all within your existing framework. So in other words, there is no need to change these underlying systems, which is a very expensive and time-consuming task. If any of you try to change ERP systems, you will know and understand that very well. So if we look then at, if that's the vision of digital agility, how do we get there? What does this stepped approach actually look like? Well, this isn't just us saying this, but you know, other business analysts and management consultants out there have seen the same thing, that a stepped approach might also be called a manageable approach to digital maturity. And Forrester here, one of the leading analysts, lays out 5 steps. This is from the most basic, where at level 1, you're replacing the paper that is in the process. And they use the term DTM, which is digital transaction management. To level 2, where you're automating the content. This is where you can auto-generate documents and automate workflows, adding value a little bit more and doing things you can't do with purely a paper process. At level 3, you're embedding these sorts of tools and practices into existing processes or applications. And you can see these, as you like, as building blocks of digital transformation. So it's like building a house, that you need to bring the different components together, whether that's the foundations or the frame and structure, or the windows or the doors. And it's only once it gets to a certain place that you start to see the overall shape coming together, and can then start to fill in some of the more nicer detail in terms of the interior finishes and the accessories and the like. And so at level 4, once the basics are in place, you then get into redesigning the customer journey completely on an end-to-end basis. And from there, level 5 is about continuous optimization. And that is about making sure that you have enough process feedback and statistical data in order to be able to continuously improve, to reduce costs, enhance customer experience, and so on. So as you come up that staircase, then you're moving from a rigid and cumbersome type of systems approach to a flexible and agile approach. To a flexible and agile approach, where errors are reduced, timescales are shrunk, and staff can concentrate on the most important work. And indeed, digital transaction management is about streamlining business processes, keeping them digital, and they will include technologies like workflow automation technologies, electronic signing, and other ways of more smartly handling and disseminating information, searching and retrieving information, and the like. So, depending upon where your business is, the most important thing to actually get moving to the next step is to actually know where you are now. And this is something where many organizations are simply guessing. They'll ask some of their peers, perhaps. They'll ask their friends down the pub about what they're doing. They might bring in some expensive analysts or consultants. But whichever way it is, it's important to know kind of where you are. And so for this, we help a number of companies with some basic tools that we provide. We will provide these free of charge at the most introductory level, and then we can go on to work with you to drill down if we need more detail. So the first of these is one that helps you know where you're starting from. So the 5 levels that we looked at previously on the Forrester chart, you'll see a similarity here in terms of this is an ascending level of maturity as people move from replacing the paper, digitizing, automating and managing into optimizing, but equally there is a process control element to this. Now, for many organizations, they would suggest that they don't really want to get much more than level 3 because of the process control elements. But the good news is that with technology, that a lot of those control elements, and it's all down to internal discipline and control practices that are typically associated with each of these. But with the right technology, these process control and statistical reporting elements can be handled by smart software. We often start with a series of assessments to help frame or scope the planned changes before discussing any solution in detail. So working with the clients as a trusted partner, we enable clients to understand how to build success one step at a time, with every step giving that positive ROI. So let me try to flesh this out with some examples. We've been talking conceptually so far, but let's try to give some more concrete examples. So, you know, we have many different types of technologies to choose from. We're not tied to one, and we will align our solutions to what works best for our clients. So taking a fairly typical scenario here. A purchase invoice approval. A typical process is that the order and then the invoice gets checked against different ledgers, and then you're checking against delivery paperwork. These are all pretty manual tasks. It then may be work for approval, or there may be some further investigation, and then there's a filing and administration stage. And for most organizations, studies show that this elapsed time can easily be 10+ minutes with a traditional approach to this, with a mix of paper and basic digital technology with unconnected PCs, for example. Contrast that to a digital process where everything's coordinated, and this entire process could happen in seconds. And within that, the humans only handle the exception handling, whereas the software handles all of the reconciliations, the process automation parts, whether it's the automatic number recognition, automatic text recognition, converting characters through OCR technologies, so that they can then be used by further stages of the system. But this applies only to, if you like, one small process within an overall enterprise process. In a real life example, a variant on this simple use case is one of the clients that we provide this technology, or some of the underlying technologies for, is a mobile engineering services firm. And this is, in their example, they have their fully automated billing sent to the customer before their engineers have even finished their shifts at the end of the day. So how does that happen? Well, the purchase invoice is the last step in terms of a series of end-to-end workflows where the equipment repair engineers' work days start on toughened tablets, excuse me, where their job schedules, van stocks, technical documents, and anything else they need for the job is actually on there at the start of the day, so they can load the van with the right supplies. They then, by the time they're on site and have completed the jobs on site at the customer's premise, they add the time and expense elements to work order completions. Those get signed off by the customer on the tablet, and by the time the engineer is walking out to the customer and is able to sync to the internet, there's an automatic syncing for real-time status visibility by headquarters. That means cash flows are speed. Other features beyond just, if you like, the financial elements of the process can occur, like dynamic rerouting of jobs through the day, and all sorts of additional productivity gains. So this is just, this is one example where we're taking what might be this example done in paper as level 1, to digitizing this as level 2, to bringing in some sort of automation steps as level 3, and then at level 4, you're connecting it out to the other processes of the organization, as we saw in some of the previous charts. So with this approach, you get end-to-end business effectiveness. So who else has used this approach? Well, here's a cross section of users, both big and small. You'll see industry-wise, it's a complete cross section of industries, large and small. You've got retail stores there, such as Dixon's Carphone, Vodafone, T-Mobile, where they're improving efficiency, customer experience, or both. You've got here actually the German Ministry of Finance, which, whilst not English, they use the most frequently used complex form in Europe. There's over 1.2 billion transactions annually for their tax and other related online matters, and they use cascading fields and logic options to only present relevant input fields to users based on previous information. So in all cases, what brings all of these together, whether you're a retail store, whether you're a financial organization, whether you're the government, whether you're into logistics and shipping or banking, then what you're actually getting here is an automation of all of the manual processes, whether it's from purchase to pay or from first contact to onboarding. Now, during this pandemic, we've helped many firms to change. For example, one small city-based finance operator in England, through the pandemic, probably only about 9 months ago, started working with us. And they've now, through digital technologies, they've changed from having a one city operation to being UK-wide with their distribution, with regulated onboarding of new customers done remotely, and they're growing and profiting very nicely. So we can see, therefore, that the benefits from this are many. And just as a kind of recap, in terms of some of the takeaways of why this makes sense. We've talked about a number of these already in terms of error reduction and timelines and risk. But it's also important to know and consider your staff and make sure that they're with you for the journey, and particularly with smaller organizations. And that holds whether you're tens or hundreds of people in the organization, because staff satisfaction, staff retention, and the leveraging and productivity of existing staff and their knowledge and existing systems can come home to pay immediate benefits, and those will set you up for the future. So without going through these one by one, and we're more than happy to talk about these in more detail, of course, but I'm conscious of the time. I think the final thought would be, how might all this apply to me? How do we get started with this? How do we make the next change? So you might know there's some problems in your business, but you need a little bit of help. So if I can advance the slide, there we go. So as I said before, we've got some tools that can help this. For all attendees that are here today, please just drop us a line, and we'll give you access to our digital maturity tools so that you can, for yourself, analyze your own organization or your own process. We've also got introductory return on investment models so that you can see what the payback might be in terms of your investment in improving any particular process. And then, as I said, these valuable tools are there at an introductory level, but behind them, there's a whole series more that we can help with if you need that deeper dive. So the ballpark investment, the ballpark ROI calculator gives you basically size of prize. But please discuss with us if you need any further help. Now, I hope that you can see how digitizing and automating in this way, automating your business processes can be viewed as being incrementally building upon stepping stones of building agile organizations. So for us, the answer is always yes. Now, what's the question? So with that, I'll take that as the segue to throw the floor open to your questions and see how we might help. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chris, for delivering today's webinar. Okay, so delegates, if you have any questions for Chris or David, please post them in the chat box and they will answer them accordingly. So before we wait for any questions, I'm going to ask a question. Okay, so I read a recent article, Chris or David, on how COVID-19 has pushed companies over the technology tipping point and transformed business forever. Do you believe this is true? And do you think this is going to be a long-term thing?
Yes, is the short answer. I mean, there are very few businesses in the world that aren't being affected by this trend, and that even businesses that were, fully paper are finding that they're needing to change because actually their supply chain or their customers are demanding that change. So there will continue to be, some obvious exceptions in terms of basic physical goods where there is, very little difference, particularly in a cash economy, for example. But for most businesses, they are needing to change the way that they do things and to adapt to either new regulations, new working patterns, new customer expectations. And if you do it, if you like, in a very focused way, that'll mean that you can gain the competitive advantage, because everybody is effectively hit a kind of ground zero event over the last year, and they've had to reappraise very quickly how do they change their businesses. The problem, of course, is that many businesses actually either don't have the right skills in-house, they don't have the right systems, they don't have the right elements in terms of all the other things that would normally be needed, and certainly at a time where cash is in very heavy demand. And so what we're advocating is an approach that allows you to use and leverage what you already have, to use that to maximum effect, and to put in place a roadmap which makes sense every step of the way, but leverages your existing systems, people and processes as you move forward. And then you change those processes to adapt. And that might be moving from, let's say, a paper-based onboarding in the case of an IFA, where previously somebody would have to travel to an office and present paper documents in person and have physical signing of the paperwork, to now that can all be done remotely. Or that might be an import-export. We've been seeing a lot of news in terms of customs and Brexit impact at the moment, and a lot of that is really around the wrong codes being on the wrong pieces of digital documentation, and just one set of codes wrong in a complete mixed transport container can hold up the whole load. And so with the sorts of technologies we're talking about, it's about giving end-to-end visibility for all those stakeholders that need to have that visibility. And almost any challenge or any process for different businesses is now being impacted in some way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, Chrissy has posted a question. So what transformations do you think have had the biggest impact?
I think transformations that are affecting, first, the removal of paper have the biggest impact in terms of, I think everybody knows how paper slows processes, is costly, and yet the volume of paper until the start of the pandemic being used across businesses has barely shifted from the last 10 or 20 years. I think now we're seeing a complete shift away from paper wherever possible, and we're seeing that in the sense of not only the customer demand and businesses thinking it's the right thing to do, but actually the regulators are finally now in those industries where they hadn't given a clear enough signal previously. We're interacting with regulators and different innovators to help enable the use of fully digitized processes end to end, even in some areas where, let's say, there were legal or regulatory constraints previously. So one is, definitely the paper removal, and the next step is basically, the moving from digitizing to automating and putting logic into the workflows. So as you come up those steps that we talked about, you're basically building your capabilities so that you're then freer to do more things with your business in future.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Delegates, please do post them in the chat box. As I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar has been recorded, so you can listen to it again. You can share the link with your colleagues, friends, family, if they're interested to learn about this subject or topic, and that's available on the TVCC webinar library, so through our website. Okay, I'm just going to move over to the next slide. Do continue to post your questions if you have any. Okay. I think, Chris, are you?
So I know that there was a poll earlier.
Oh yeah.
Should I bring my David? David Alcott, my professional services colleague, is also on the call as well. Dave, do you want to say something that just summarizes kind of what the audience poll has told us?
Sure. If you remember, there were 6 elements. The 3 that have come out the highest are the fact that the old rigid systems or applications or processes seem to be one of the biggest barriers, and how do you get around that? And I think showing, as you did, the fact you've got the different data silos sitting on their own, and this integration layer that allows data to migrate or move from one silo to another is a way around that. There's also pressures on IT departments from all sides. So if you're going to implement a solution like this, then obviously you're going to need help and assistance. And this why we move away from the big bang approach, I suppose, and do it incrementally, so there is enough bandwidth initially. And as you pointed out earlier, if by implementing a process you gain process efficiencies, you can then use the efficiencies and the time gained and the money saved to finance the next stage, so you have an incremental improvement in what goes on. And lastly, I think the next highest one was an awareness of the alternatives. A lot of people are unaware that there are some very clever platforms out there that can be used almost codeless to define business processes, automate them, and with a bit of help, generate solutions that not only generate the documents with data merged from these silos, but also manage the process not only internally within the organization, but manage the process externally with customers and suppliers. So they're the 3 highest areas that came out during the poll.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dave. And yeah, I've been conscious to not talk about specific technologies going through this, but keep this kind of pretty generic. in terms of particular technology types. We provide a whole range of different solutions and services. So whether or not you're talking about things that I've already referred to, such as e-signing and workflow automation, or indeed AI-based approaches, machine learning-based approaches, the use of the storage and retrieval technologies. We didn't want to get into the technology piece of that today. We're very happy to talk to that, but today's really been, I hope, about seeding an approach or a concept in terms of saying there are ways to solve these very thorny issues. And they don't have to cost the earth or take the hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds of investment that other companies we've seen try to spend to actually solve these challenges. There are ways of doing this much more modestly and actually build resilience, scalability through that digital agility, which I believe is an absolute must-have, for any business moving forward.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, David, Chris, anything else you think you'd like to touch on?
Chris mentioned about those two tools, and you saw the URL links to them. So the maturity matrix and the return on investment analysis tools. So we've taken a lot of our knowledge and experience and built a couple of web pages which you can use. There's quite an extensive set of instructions on how to use them, but if you find that you struggle with them or want a more deep dive on any of these, then as Chris mentioned earlier, we'll be more than happy to help you on a one-to-one basis.
Great.
Yeah, and just if you'd like that, just jot your details down in the chat or just email us at info@icon and we can provide further details. Other means of support is there's currently a member-to-member e-signing offer that is on since the start of the pandemic, almost a year ago now. We decided that to get people on at least the first rung of the ladder, we were offering and have been offering e-signing software on a SaaS basis free of charge for up to 5 users. That offer is still there. I have to say it's a limited time offer now because the end is in sight. We, fingers crossed. But for those people that would like to use and experiment with the software for free, then please get in touch. Some users have had the benefit of almost a year's worth of use, but please get in touch if that is relevant on the Thames Valley member-to-member offer. Otherwise, if you're interested in staying up to date with our other offers or a periodic newsletter, then again, please just let us know your details and we'll add you to our list.
That's great. Thank you very much. So a very interesting, engaging subject and topic you've touched on today. I'm sharing a slide with my contact details and also for Chris and Steve. So Steve has also worked on this presentation today, and then David's joined us for further assistance in answering questions and so on. So thank you very much to both of you. So please do connect with Chris, David and Steve on social media. So they're on LinkedIn, and just search for them and they will appear, and follow the company icon on social media as well. So great, thank you very much, and please do, as I mentioned, listen to this webinar or share it again if you would like to through the TVCC website.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good luck with your endeavours and stay safe. Cheers.
All of us. Thank you. Bye.